الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما جهلنا وذكرنا ما نسينا. I ask Allah that He grants us all sincerity in intention and action upon what we say, and that He accepts our action for His sake, inshallah. I was asked to talk about Tazkiyah in English, and I thought I would just give a brief introduction to the topic, because it's not something that we can feel or hear or sense in a physical way. So sometimes it is a little bit difficult to understand how this can translate into a physical action and how that physical action affects our behavior. So I have 3 sessions with you, inshallah, today, inshallah, and next week, and then the final Friday of Ramadan, inshallah. So I thought I would present this to you in a form of a series of questions. What is Tazkiyah? If you think about this, what is Tazkiyah? Who does Tazkiyah? How do you actually carry out Tazkiyah? And where would you do Tazkiyah? And when would you do Tazkiyah? But perhaps the most important question that we should always reflect upon and contemplate and think about is why. We always talk about the how, especially in this material world. We always talk about the how. We can understand how things work, but we very rarely question why things are the way they are. So I thought I would start with why we need to know about Tazkiyah. Ramadan is always a golden opportunity on an annual basis, a gift from Allah for us to revisit our relationship with Him. And this opportunity is very strongly related to Tazkiyah. And I hope, inshallah, that we will go through the questions of why, who, when, where, and how. And we'll end with the how, so that we can fulfill the main aim of this, which is to please Allah by acting upon what we know. There is no point in learning about something. Being ignorant is one level, having knowledge is another level, and acting upon this knowledge is the highest and most important level. So if we start with the question, why is this even a topic? Why do we need to know about Tazkiyah? And in anything to do with our daily life, whether it is obviously to do with Islam, or just going to work, or dealing with neighbors, or any action, whether it's immediately related to our deen or less directly related to our deen, we always turn to the Quran, and then we turn to the Sunnah, and then we turn to the Seerah of the Salaf, and so on. So why do we need to know about Tazkiyah? Well, the answer is in several areas of the Quran. So just for an example, in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 151, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, كَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا فِيكُمْ رَسُولًا مِنْكُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِنَا وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. We have indeed sent to you, a messenger from amongst you, he's talking to Quraysh, reciting to you our verses, and yuzakkikum, purifying you, and teaching you the book, the Quran, and wisdom, hikmah, which some of Mufassirun say is the Sunnah, and teaching you that which you did not know. Similarly, in Surah Al-Jum'ah, ayah number 2, هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. Similar meaning, but it's interesting that the tazkiyah, the purification in both of those ayahs, preceded the knowledge of the book. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. And that indicates the importance of tazkiyah and how much or how little attention we give it. So if we look at just those two ayahs, yatlul ayat, that's one action. Yuzakki, these are actions ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the Prophet to carry out. It's part of his mission, it's part of his message, it's part of his risal. Yatlul ayat, okay, reciting the verses. Yuzakki, to purify and teaches how to purify. Yu'allimul kitab, teaches us the book, the Quran. وَيُعَلِّمُ الْحِكْمَةِ, and teaches us wisdom. This is his sunnah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this is one of the many proofs of tazkiyah being an obligation. It's not a luxurious option. It's not a superficial element of our ibadah. It's something that we neglect at our own risk. And this is very obvious from just the two ayahs that we've mentioned, and the order of the Prophet's mission. يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِنَا وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. So that order carries significance. It also answers the question as who is tazkiyah for? Well, clearly, if it's the Prophet's mission to recite the verses and to teach us the book and to teach us the wisdom, al-hikmah, as-sunnah, and before the kitab and the sunnah, it's supposed to teach us purification, then clearly we are obliged, just as we are obliged to read the book and apply it, we are obliged to understand and learn and apply tazkiyah. Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes an oath in the Quran, and Allah is the creator of all things, so it is in Allah's remit to make an oath, and we've all read the surahs وَالضُّحَى وَالْعَصْرِ وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making an oath by these things, وَالشَّمْسِ وَاللَّيْلِ, and it is only for Allah to do this, but for us, as we all know, we can only take an oath by Allah. But the reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the context of the Quran makes an oath in this way is for usually two reasons. One, to draw our attention to something that is great or magnificent or important. And the other is to tell us about something after this oath that is important. And as far as tazkiyah is concerned, when we read the beginning of Surah Al-Shams, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَاهَا. That's 7 oaths. Why? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّى. Allah, Al-Malik, Al-Jabbar, the creator of all things, doesn't take one oath, 2, 3, 8, 7 or 8, to draw our attention to all of these great signs of his creation, but also to tell us that it's all very important to draw your attention to tazkiyah. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. This is probably the longest sequence of oaths, qasam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken, and the main action for us to pay attention to is tazkiyah. So this gives us a very broad sense, not only of the obligation upon us as individuals and communities to learn about tazkiyah and apply it, but also that it is important as an expression of our ibadah. In all verses that you read about al-mu'minun, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا, آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا. There's always an action that follows the internal. And tazkiyah, a lot of us think of it as a very abstract thing. You have to be in a dark room and not speak and wear funny clothes, or just the concept of tazkiyah has been skewed with time. But it's far simpler than this stereotype. Much neglected, much needed, especially in this material age that we live in, and very difficult to keep track of. But we will discuss, inshallah, some of the ways that we can achieve it. So if we take a practical example of an expression of tazkiyah, how do we actually show tazkiyah. It's supposed to show in our behavior. So if we take again an ayah from the Quran, Surah Al-Ankabut, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ. Indeed, prayer, salah, prohibits immorality and wrongdoing. So that's an example of tazkiyah, purification of salah. So the question as individuals, do we feel better after our salah? Do we feel changed? Ramadan is a good example because our behavior definitely changes. Are we the same? If we are the same after Ramadan as we were before Ramadan, that's a problem. And as an individual, we live in communities. After Salat al-Taraweeh, what happens outside? What's the state of the parking? What's the state of the road? This is all a reflection of tazkiyah or the absence of tazkiyah. How can our salah prohibit us from wrongdoing, however little, however trivial? And this is the state of our communities. So clearly the link between, because remember the munafiqun, and this is very dangerously close to a lot of us. Munafiqun lived in Medina. They lived and saw and dealt and ate and traded with the Prophet ﷺ. They carried out the physical actions. You know, they even went to some of the ghazawat. But what was wrong? Their hearts. Exactly, their hearts were impure. We are all at risk of this. If the salah doesn't have some effect, if siyam doesn't have, if zakah itself is from a root word that is the same as yuzaki, to pure. What zakah is purifying your money, your wealth. So if we don't link the physical actions that the munafiqun even did at a time that they lived with the Prophet, then there is a huge gap between what we think we're doing and what is actually happening. So again, a brief example that I'm sure you're all familiar with, in Siyam. مَنْ لَمْ يَدَعْ قَوْلَ الزُّورِ وَالْعَمَلَ بِهِ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ فِي أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. The hadith related by Imam Bukhari. Any of us who does not relinquish, leave, stop lying, then there's no point in leaving your food and drink. The physical side is manageable. It's the effect on you and your behavior, and therefore the community at large and society beyond that, and our countries. It's a knock-on effect. You had people who fought over a goat or a sheep between the two tribes for decades. And these were the same people that through Tazkiyah, within 30 years of the message, ruled half the world. Same people. So the only thing that has changed is the link between the physical and the internal, the purification, the tazkiyah. Tazkiyah, purity, purification, sanctification, is related to our fitrah. كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. Each one of us, each human being, not just Muslim, every human being is pure, is born in a pure fitrah, instinctive, natural state. It's after that that the impurities start to build up. And this is why tazkiyah is very important. Allah has given us in this material world a balance, a mizan. This balance is physical and spiritual. We've now lived in an age that has become exceedingly, excessively, too much occupied with the physical. And even when we intend to do the physical things that have been obligated upon us, have been made fard upon us, we still don't pay perhaps enough attention to the effect of this physical aspect, the leaving of food and drink, given that we're in Ramadan, and how it should change our behavior. So, Tazkiyah is an active process. It's not something that comes easily. It's an active process to re-purify ourselves. We want to go back to fitrah. فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليه. We want to go to this pure, natural state. Now, how we do this will be the subject of the last dars, inshallah, the last Friday of Ramadan, inshallah. But it's important here to emphasize that you should look at it as a fard. It may not have been stated as a fard, but it should be the natural succession to the furud. So our salah, our siyam, our zakah, our hajj and umrah, by natural extension, should lead to a secondary fard, which is tazkiyah. It should lead to a change. As-salah tanha 'anil fahsha wal munkar. As-siyam changes your behavior. When you go to hajj, you've been promised to come back as pure as when you were born. That's the statement of the hadith. And then you have to struggle to maintain this purity that you were given by the privilege of going to hajj. So this was a brief introduction to Tazkiyah. Just to remind you, we want to approach this from a practical way. In other words, what we want is at the end of the series of 3 sessions is for each one of us to have something to do, some action to follow, in the same way that you expect, inshallah, that each one of us would be different after Ramadan. We want all of our ibadah to lead to some aspect of purification of the heart, because remember, on the Day of Judgment, يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. It's the purity of the heart. وإن في الجسد لمضغة لو صلحت صلح الجسد كله. There is a morsel of flesh in the body, the rectification of which, when that becomes right, when that becomes adjusted, the rest of the body will follow. أسأل الله العظيم أن ينفعنا بما علمنا وأن يرزقنا العمل بما نعلم. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وجزاكم الله خيرا.